Naomi, welcome to the podcast. I'm so happy to have you here.
Oh, it's so good to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
There's no one I'd rather have, to be honest. I need to start by telling everyone, though, that the reason I'm so inspired by you is because you are the only person who has ever got me to sit still and meditate. And not only that, but for 20 minutes, morning and night. So,
Yay!
so for that, you've won my heart.
Oh, that's so great to hear.
How are you still on the meditation train? Because you went off the grid for a while, and I'd quite like to know where you've been and what you've been doing and why you've been missing from my life for so long.
Yeah, so I think when did we meet? We met, probably about 7 years ago now?
Was it that long?
Yeah,
It
I
must have
feel like
been.
it was quite a long time ago because we met when I was, I think, studying a lot of meditation and really on my journey of wellness, and meditation was like a big part of my life. And I went on to train as a teacher, as you know, and then, teach a lot of courses in London and internationally. And I had the pleasure of teaching you.
You did.
A few years later, I think we bumped into each other, didn't we, in a cafe in London where I was doing like an intro talk to meditation. I was like, "Hi,
Yeah.
you want to come to learn to meditate?"
I was like, no. And then I thought about it and thought, okay, I will. She's won me over. You have a way of just making the sort of spiritual woo-woo stuff completely desirable, and all stuff I talk to you, I'm like, yes, just I'll do whatever you tell me to do.
Well, yeah, I mean, we connected over the meditation, and you came and learned Vedic meditation, which is what I was teaching at the time. And I was teaching that for a good few years. And like you say, I was sort of in London, sort of quite present in terms of publicly teaching. And then I kind of dropped back and, as you say, kind of went off the grid again. And I suppose that's been the last sort of 3 years, 2 to 3 years. Actually, no, it's about 3 years now, that I think, as you could probably relate to, that when you're on a journey of really discovering who you are and really who you are and what it is that you want to share with the world, things can change and things can feel in alignment and they feel really like your truth, and you're like, yeah, you can be so enthusiastic about it and you can really throw yourself into it for quite a long time. That was certainly my case with meditation. And then as my journey progressed personally and also professionally, things have started to shift, and it didn't feel like completely in alignment for me anymore. And it just, things then opened up. My path then continued to open up. And that's when I went down, into healing and more in understanding the energy of people, not only in terms of their mental health and their physical health and their spiritual health, but also their energetic health. And so I kind of went off grid again and went into sort of deep learning and healing of myself, because this work is deep. The spiritual path, I think, can have this view of it being quite, sort of like you say, like woohoo and sexy and da 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 da. But actually, in reality, it can be really tough. It can be really tough to go through because it asks a lot of you. It asks you to really question, who you are. It asks you to look at your wounds, looks at what it is that you really want to offer and stand for in this world and what you really believe in, and that can be really challenging at times.
Yeah, tell me about it. I don't feel like anyone has really got into this field without having their own journey and their own reason that they got here. What started it all for you? I want to come back to the healing and the energetic healing, because I'm like, what's that? And what do I need to know about this? But I also want to know your backstory. What made you get into this whole field in the first place?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I was in corporate. So I was in one of the big management consulting firms, and that's how I started my career. Now, my background was in psychology. So I studied psychology at university, and I have always been fascinated by people and their behavior. And I've also always been sensitive and perceptive. And I really had an interest in health psychology in particular. And I went on to do a master's in health psychology, and well, I was marketing, but I specialized in how to communicate health messages in a really relevant way to people. And then that kind of led me into corporate, and I worked in like people change and cultural change for massive FTSE 100 companies. And that was really beneficial because I had got the business background and the really understanding about what it is, on the ground, for people working in these companies and really implementing change. And then I got to 26, and then I was just completely burnt out and disillusioned. And I was like, this can't be the rest of my life, working sort of 16-hour days in a cell, which was what it felt like, I was like, this, and I also, the sad thing is I knew I wasn't me anymore. I just lost the spark, and it was just being drained out of me. And I just got to the point where, my health wasn't good, like emotionally, physically, really stressed out. My body was showing signs of, as I said, like deep fatigue. And I just thought, enough, like something has got to be better than this. And I don't have a plan, because it had always been, get a successful high-flying career and, get paid lots and be a city girl and be party hard and work hard. And I was living that whole, probably, as you hear so many stories of this, like the glamorous go-getter. And that's what I was. And I was defined by it until the fact I realized I was absolutely miserable. And then I was like, I've got to do something else. And I just quit. And I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a backup plan. I had some savings in my bank account because I thought I needed to buy a house, because that was the thing that, is going to get me happiness. So I had like a deposit sort of saved. And that was enough for me to have like a buffer to kind of be like, okay, I need to go and like figure out what it is that I want to go and be if I'm not going to be this corporate consultant. And so I quit, and I'd never had a gap year, and I'd love to travel. So I went off on a bit of a odyssey, and that became my first spiritual odyssey. And at the time I had no idea that that was what it was going to become, but that's what it became. And it was, honestly, I look back at that sort of year, 18 months of once I'd left and I was traveling around the world and just starting to connect back into here. I'd lived so in my mind and what I thought I needed to be and what I needed to do, and traveling and just starting to like wake up in the morning and just go, what do I feel like doing today? And starting to just tap into the flow again. It just took me to the most magical places and people. And that was the beginning of my journey, because towards the end of that year, I'd been in South America, and then I'd come back to London, and I was like, right, I suppose I've got to get a job again. And I was like, no, I don't want to get another job. I've still got more travel to do. Like, this isn't over yet. And of course, at that point, the mind's still going, oh, you need to, you need to get a job, da da da. And I was like, no. And my sister had emigrated to Singapore.
Oh, wow.
I thought, oh, I'll go and visit my sister in Singapore. And I looked at the map and I was like, what's near Singapore that I could go to? In Bali. I was like, I'm going to go to Bali. And I was like, right, I'm going to go. And I had always done yoga, right? So yoga had always been a consistent part of my life, because when I was younger, I was a gymnast and I was a dancer.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so that's a bit of a fun fact for you. So I always loved to move my body. So like that was always an outlet for me. And so when I was really stressed at work, all my holidays were going to some like luxury retreat somewhere, to go and do yoga. And I just thought, do you know what? I'm going to go to Bali and I'm going to do some yoga. At that point, Ubud was like still this tiny little place that, not many people knew about. But of course, now it's like the mecca of health and well-being. And I went to Bali not knowing anything about it. And I just, as soon as I landed, I was like, I've come home. Like there was such a deep feeling in my heart that I was like, I know I need to be here. And I arrived in Ubud, and it was like, I was a kid in a candy shop, Jodie. It was like meditation, yoga, like nutrition. And I literally just spent like days just jumping from like one cafe eating greens and smoothies to doing yoga classes. And that was really where I was inspired to be like, wow, this is what's setting me alight. This is just lit a fire in my belly of like learning and interest. And it was just like the light that had gone out for so many years just got like switched on. And I was only meant to be there for a month, and I think I ended up staying for like 9 months, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's where I learnt meditation to start with.
Oh, that just sounds like the dream. I'm sitting here going, oh, I'm in snowy London. I want to be in Bali and living your journey. It's like very eat, pray, love, but even more magical.
I know. People have said that to me. I was like, it wasn't deliberate. I didn't do the Italian bit with the pasta. So.
That's all right. I feel like the Bali bit is some of the best bits anyway.
Yeah.
But did you know at that point that you wanted to be a teacher, or you were just flowing with it and just seeing whatever appealed to you?
Yeah, so this again is another interesting story. So I was just for a number of months just soaking it all up, right? I was just like healing myself, just noticing the difference in myself as I was doing these practices. And I thought, you know what, while I'm in Bali, I'm going to do my yoga teacher training. It just makes sense. And so I did my training, but before that, I just knew that I wanted to come back to London with a tool at that point that I still thought I was going to go back into corporate to help me tap into the peace that I was experiencing out in Bali. And for me, meditation was the thing that I kept coming back to. It's like, learn to meditate, instill a practice that you can do when you get home. And so I booked onto this course, not thinking about it. I was just like, that's the one I'm going to do. That's the teacher. I'm just going to go along. And I was the only person that turned up to the course. And so I basically had this one-on-one situation where I was learning with my teacher at the time in this beautiful villa, overlooking the rice paddies. I mean, it was gorgeous.
Oh.
So I had a very lovely first meditation experience. But the weird thing is, on the third day of that meditation course, I was in meditation, bearing in mind, for this, I didn't know anybody who meditated. I'd only meditated 1 or 2 times before that. And I had such a clear vision when I went into the meditation of me standing in front of a group of corporate workers teaching meditation. And it was the weirdest vision ever, because before that I wasn't particularly intuitive, but it was just like, I came out that meditation and I was like, I don't know how and I don't know why, but I know deep in my bones that I'm gonna do that is something that I need to listen to. And also, again, back then, 8 years ago, people weren't really meditating, let alone teaching corporations meditation. But yet I was like so in here, just knowing that it was like a path that just, it then completely reorientated me after that. I was like, I'm going to become a meditation teacher and I'm going to teach businesses and people within corporates how to meditate. Oh, and then I just basically amazing. Went off on one for like 3 years to like actually actualize the vision. So
wow. Do you know what? It gives me like shivers, because I just think, I wish as women, as a collective, we could all step back and do this and tap into those intuitive moments and get off the hamster wheel of the things that we think we should be doing.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so inspiring just hearing you showing everyone that it's possible, that you can do this.
Yeah, and I think it's like a muscle, and I think, people, you do hear that the intuition is something that it responds to you listening to it. You need to take the time to connect to it, and then, this is the important thing, have the courage to follow through, right? Because the intuition often doesn't make any sense. Like me having that vision years ago, that made absolutely no sense to my life pre that time. It was like, I've never been an entrepreneur before. I've only just learned to meditate. Like, how, what, why? But there's that knowing that it's just like, I need to do this, and it might not ever come to fruition, but I know that on that path I'm going to learn some amazing things. And of course, that's what happened in this particular case. The dream did come to fruition, and your life is constantly inviting us at every moment to choose to listen to those intuitive whispers, or to allow the mind to come in and go, Jodie, don't do that. That's stupid. Like, do you realize that that's insane? Versus, oh, but my heart or my womb is telling me, just have a go. Just see, take that leap, take that courage, just see where it goes. And then, of course, the universe just comes and ushers to meet you when you make that tiny step. And then it gives you that support and that momentum to be like, oh, I am on the right path. I'm going to keep going. And then you find other people on a similar path and they start cheering you on. And then you're like, oh, I can do this. I can live a heart-centered life.
It's interesting because I explored many different avenues. I think you were with me for a few of them. Like, I've got some adaptogens to try and I'm doing this. But it never felt quite right. And it was never working. I felt like I was constantly forcing this business.
Yeah.
But the second that I just kind of let go, and also I was myself, and I started not being this sciencey nutritionist that was coming out with really big words, but I started just to laugh about nutrition and just to be myself. Everything has started flowing. It's not an effort to do this. It just, like you said, the universe sort of came to meet you.
Yeah.
But I think it is important to listen to that inner voice. And often I'm talking to women about period problems, and I say our bodies they give us a little sign. They tell us they're not happy.
Yeah.
Like, well, our body will tell us it's not happy. And then it starts getting louder and louder until some women are just having the most horrific period pains or irregular cycles until we have absolutely no choice but to pay attention. And even you were saying with your burnout, it got so bad that you just couldn't continue.
Yeah, and it's so true. It's like the body's wisdom is, oh my gosh, I could like talk for hours about the body's wisdom and how much it is just so intuitive. It's just whether we give it the airtime or the space for us to actually connect to those signs. Because as you said, for me, the writing on the wall for my burnout was there years prior, but it was like, oh no, I'm going to keep pushing through. I'm just going to keep ignoring it. I was so disconnected to my body. Until of course you get the whack in the face, I call it the slap, that then it's like, okay, now I don't have any other choice but to listen. But we kind of want to get to the point where we're not forced into those situations. And I understand that it's the same with my clients too, you know, tend to get people when something really bad's happened, you know, there's a physical ailment or there's a loss or there's a significant event that kind of awakens us to something that it's like, okay, I need to understand something here about myself and about life. Actually, our challenges are trying to teach us at every moment, and they have, you know, the body is a way for us to really, you know, listen. So if we've been ignoring things on an emotional level for a while, or maybe on the mental level for a while, you know, as soon as it hits the physical level in terms of physical pain, like period pain or you know, significant burnout, then we have to really listen.
Mm-hmm.
And then we start to get that really wise, if we choose to listen, those wise signs about actually what it is that we need to do for ourselves to heal.
I think
the answers are there.
So right. Yeah. But you know what? I was thinking about this the other day, is that we are so disconnected. And I think the medical world and the marketing that we're exposed to has us believe that our bodies are almost stupid. There's no way we could possibly heal ourselves. We almost like need someone else in this medical world to fix us.
Yeah.
And we couldn't possibly do it on our own. We need intervention. And also there's all these bombardment of messages. You will get sick. You will get this. You will get that. And it's just, I almost feel like we've completely lost this desire to take responsibility for our health. Yes. And to listen, like you said.
Yeah. And you're so right. And I think a lot of our work as healers, practitioners, therapists, people in the wellness space is really empowering people to remember that their bodies, their minds have all the answers within them to come back to their natural state of alignment and balance. And it's about holding that space for people to make that reconnection. You know, you talk about that disconnection, which is so rife in our society, you know, like we're so used to, like you say, giving our power away to somebody else and be like, fix me, there's something wrong with me, instead of going, okay, I'm not actually broken. maybe on the surface I feel like there are lots of things wrong, but actually if you connect to a place deeper inside of yourself, there's the wholeness, there's the wisdom, there's our natural state of health and balance. And it's about remembering that we all have the capability to heal ourselves. A healer doesn't heal you. A healer creates the space for you to naturally connect to your own self-healing mechanisms. You know, it's not about, you know, idolizing a guru or somebody that's like, oh my God, they got a magic wand. You know, it's empowerment. And I think that's also what you're talking to about your work. You know, it's about really empowering people to realize that they can take back control. They can heal their bodies, they can heal their lives, but it's their decision. It's each of our decisions whether we want to go on that journey or not. And actually, sometimes when the rubber hits the road, a lot of people don't actually want to help themselves. You know, they want to stay in victim mode and they want to, you know, be fixed or saved. And that's where, you know, this is where I say the healing journey takes courage. It takes courage to pick ourselves up and to look at ourselves and take responsibility for where we haven't been kind to ourselves, or where we've been holding emotional baggage that can be impacting us physically. You know, and that takes courage to be able to look at and own for ourselves and not to blame, you know, outwards. Like, oh, it's their fault.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I just want to be like, mic drop. That was you're so on point with all of it and everything you're saying. I'm just going, yeah. It is it is hard to just decide at that moment to take responsibility for your health. And I think in this culture at the moment, especially, there does seem to be a lot of blame.
Yeah.
But if we really want to heal, we've got to break away from that.
Yeah, and like you say, like there's the conditioning of the society. There's also the fact that of everything that we've just been, you know, we're currently going through as a collective in terms of the pandemic and everything. And I just think there is so much that we can be doing for ourselves, and that's taking back the power and control to ourselves in terms of our diet, our lifestyle, you know, like things like meditation. What can I do to start rebuilding that bridge, that connection to myself, my body, my mind, and maybe even something bigger than just the individuality, so something more spiritual, so connecting to something bigger than ourselves. And I really see health as not only psychological health, like mental health and physical health and emotional health, but also spiritual health. And I think as in the last few years, I've really seen this come a lot more into the fore as something that we've kind of ignored and just sort of pushed away, but actually is a really important part of the whole being and the whole health picture, actually. So I think, yeah, there's a lot that we can do for ourselves.
And you're into now this energetic healing, and I was looking at all the sorts of things that you're doing, and I need you to explain some more of this to me because it sounds magical. You're doing spiritual counselling, which includes soul retrieval, ancestral healing, chakra healing, and all sorts of amazing intuitive things with spirit guides. Please tell me more.
So yeah, I think it's important to give a bit of context with it, because as much as that can sound quite woohoo, and it does in some ways, and I would kind of like, if I'd looked at this years ago, I probably would have thought the same. But I think for me, having gone on the journey that I have and really awakened my own truth and what we were talking about in terms of connecting to our heart and our intuition, and for me it was about acknowledging this part of myself that I'd very much kept in the closet. And it was like, I know that, you know, we're all spiritual beings having a human experience here, and I'm deeply intuitive. I'm actually psychic. I can pick up on things, you know, spaces and rooms and what people are thinking and feeling. But it was something that I shut away for many years, because I was like, oh God, you know, like being sensitive is, you know, seen as something that's not you know, as almost something, oh, you're too sensitive. It's seen as a negative rather than something that's positive.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really my teaching meditation that really opened that door to sort of the energy world and the spirit world more to me. Given that as I started to meditate more, I just started to perceive more through my senses that maybe some other people weren't seeing and sensing. So I see energy as it's like a frequency, it's like a radio wave, and you can tune yourself into that radio frequency or tune out. And my senses started to really tune into the subtle energies and frequencies which are constantly surrounding people, our environments. And I became very sensitive. You know, I could walk into a room and be like, somebody's really angry in here, because I could just feel anger like flood through my body. Or I could sit next to somebody on the train and I just knew that they were really sad. And I was like, okay, like this is starting to become overwhelming when you start to feel and sense a lot that's going on around you, right? And so that really led me into the world of really understanding energy, because really everything's energy. We live in a quantum world and everything is just vibrating waves. So as I said, it's about dialing into, learning how to dial into all the different frequencies that are around us. And that's kind of what studying energy healing did for me. It was being able to harness my natural psychic senses to be able to tune into the subtleties of the human being, because we not only have a physical body, we have a mental body, we have an emotional body, and we have a spiritual and energetic body. And I believe that imbalances and illnesses and issues in our emotional life get manifested in our fields that surround us. And so for somebody like me, I can perceive what's blockages or things that are happening on the different layers. And so that's kind of what led me into doing what I do now, which is really grounding it into understanding the psyche. So really understanding the mind and the emotions of a person, which is why I have the therapeutic psychological training, whilst also addressing the spirit and the heart of the individual. And I think this is somewhere where there's been a real gap in terms of what I perceive in terms of good therapy, because you either have two ends of the spectrums, right? You either have psychological therapy, talking therapy, where you go and see a therapist and it's very much the mind, you're talking. And when a lot of people are housed in their mind and disconnected to their body, they're not actually accessing a lot of the wisdom that is held within their body just in psychological talking therapy, right? And some of psychological therapy doesn't acknowledge that we have a soul, that we have a heart, that's an intuitive guidance system within us that is constantly driving us to more soul growth and evolution. And so, at the same time, if you go to the spiritual end of stuff and you just look at spiritual healing, there's a lot of people wearing a lot of crystals and a lot of, as I say, woohoo and chimes and things like this, but they go, oh no, there's no place for the psyche, there's no place for the mind and emotions, it's all just love and light. Well, that doesn't sit quite right with me either. And so spiritual counselling is this wonderful hybrid of being able to work both psychologically, but also acknowledging that we're spiritual beings having a human experience. So being able to bring in the more spiritual interventions, the more healing interventions, along with conventional counselling and psychological therapy too. And so that's why I'm so passionate about it, because it's like, oh, my two passionate things that I'm, love, the psychology and the spirituality coming together in a happy way.
That sounds incredible. Sounds like every single one of us should be booking an appointment with you. I'm 100% going to do this the second we end this podcast. That's amazing. And I presume you've just seen incredible shifts happen.
Yeah, it's really amazing. And I suppose I'm just so passionate about it because, when you spent so many years like following the threads, the breadcrumbs, and I just feel like I've intuitively followed these breadcrumbs, and at times I'm like, I don't know why I'm doing this, but I'm going to do it. And with something like spiritual counselling, it's kind of brought it together, because I can see that all along it's everything has allowed me to get to this point. And I would always say that to other people too, that as much as sometimes those times where you're sitting there questioning, like, what the hell am I doing? Like, my life is falling apart. This makes no sense. How am I even going to make, sense of all of this? It does. You're always being guided, and you might not see it now, but you will do if you've got the faith, like trust that everything is going to come good.
100%. I am like with you on this completely. I've often looked back at, I also did nutrition. What am I talking about? I also did psychology at uni, and I just thought, why am I doing this? And clinical psychology wasn't right. And then I had like a smoothie truck, and it was just all bits of weirdness. And now it's got to the point where it's all come together, and you can't necessarily, can't get my words out this evening, you can't necessarily see it when you're in it, but when you get to the other side, everything clicks.
Yeah, definitely. And then you're like, oh, I can see why I did that. Totally. And then of course it will then shift again, because it always does. Life keeps on evolving. But yeah, I think certainly for the moment, spiritual counselling, I just feel, is something that is so aligned to, these aspects of what I find so interesting, but also, as you say, it's just so amazing to then see the results in people, because people can come to this having been in conventional therapy for like years, and then they come to do this, and it's like, oh yeah, with using the more embodied sense of connecting to their energy in themselves, it's like things can speed up a lot quicker, and and the results are a lot deeper. It's deep work. That's also something that I always kind of say to people. I think people see spiritual counselling and they think, oh, it might be a bit fluffy. No. I suppose I always say to people, I was like, this requires you to be willing to engage in your process. Again, it's not me doing it for you. It's me holding a very powerful space for you to connect to your deepest self. But it's you doing the work. It's you being willing to change. But then it's just the most fulfilling job, because you just see people like literally become more of who they are. I don't want to say change, because they do change, but it's like they're always there. They're just sometimes sat behind layers of conditioning or baggage, and they can't see it for themselves. But once they start to connect to that place inside and realize it for themselves, it's just like, it's magic. It's just so magic.
Oh, it sounds absolutely amazing. And what is soul retrieval? I've got to ask.
Yeah,
ancestral healing.
Yeah, so soul retrieval is something that, so if you imagine your whole body is consisted of energy, right? And you have this energy body around you. What can often happen is, if somebody's been through a significant trauma in their life, or particularly, I've seen it a lot with people that have had deprivation in their childhood, and that doesn't need to be, what I call a big T trauma, so like abuse or something really, heavy to happen. Traumas can happen on a smaller level too, where our needs haven't been addressed moment by moment, because hey, that happens to all of parents. Are stressed, they can't possibly expect themselves to meet every possible need of their child, right? It's just part of the parenting journey. But what happens is, at times, if somebody's been through a significant trauma to themselves, part of their energy can split off at that point. And because they almost like evacuate their body, they disconnect to themselves. A part of them splits off because it was too painful for them to be with the fact that they were abandoned or rejected at that point. And so what you see in the energy field is like almost like a pocket of themselves that they've left behind when they were younger, when a particular traumatic, say a car accident, or they broke their leg. And what can happen is, we have these pockets or fragments of energy that have been separated from our main energy body, our main core of ourselves. And it's a case of going back and retrieving and healing that part of ourselves that has had the trauma or had the pained experience, listening to that aspect of ourselves. What does it need to heal? Being able to give it to 2-year-old aspect, or that 10-year-old aspect when we had the car accident, and bringing it back into ourselves. It's like integrating the parts that have broken off. And it's amazing when that happens, because you can literally see more life force in somebody's energy body, or they can notice, oh, my muscles feel fuller, or I've got, my heart feels more expanded. Because especially like if a child's had trauma when they're younger, and then suddenly that aspect comes back into themselves, you know, like we've left that 2-year-old innocence, that wonder, that joy of that child stuck outside of ourselves. We want that beauty back in our hearts to live, you know, like I always say, like that childlike essence that we all have, but often quite disconnected to it. We're quite disconnected as adults to that sense of inner wonder and innocence that we have as children when we look at a child. And so soul retrieval can be really helpful for that.
Wow, you're gonna make me well up. It's quite emotional hearing that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, I think these are things that they're there, but not a lot of people talk about, you know, because soul retrieval, oh, that sounds a bit weird, what's that? But when you actually see it in practice and you see the impact, and I can see it because my senses are attuned to this type of thing, and obviously for the person receiving it, they're guiding their process. They're not imagining it. They're the ones connecting and bringing that memory forward within their awareness. So yeah, it can be very powerful.
It sounds, like I said before, just that everyone needs this. It's just healing on a complete level from all areas.
Yeah, but I think at the same time, I think people get called to it at different times, and I think for some people it's not appropriate for where they are in their life stage, and I completely get that.
That's interesting.
You know, I'll see people and you just know that they're not quite in the right place in their life to go on this particular journey of self-healing. And other times you meet people that just like, they just know that they're ready to take that step and to explore themselves deeper. And it's not right or wrong. It's not that everyone has to do it. It's just, I definitely know that it's a calling. It calls people. And it's just, for some people, they just know that they want to do it.
To be fair, as you say that, if I'd have spoken to you about this 5 years ago, I probably would have been like, you're a complete and utter nutcase. Yeah. Just leave me alone. I'm just going to go over here. Yeah. But now I'm like, tell me everything you've got.
Yeah. And I was the same, Jodie. Like, even for me, 2 or 3 years ago, I would go like, what's this? It's all just a load of nonsense. But I think that's the difference when it becomes, it's not just sort of airy-fairy, when it becomes your lived experience and you really sense the stuff and feel it and you see the difference in people, you know it. But I'm not here to convince people. That's the other thing. It's like, you either intuitively get drawn to this work or you don't, and that's okay. I'm not out to convince people on it. I just know that for those that are willing to go there, I am here.
Yeah. Oh, I hear you with that. Sometimes I've had referrals from people that say, you have to see Jodie, or I used to convince people, and you'd never get the results.
No.
Unless if someone turned up and said, I'm so pleased I found you, I really want to do this, I'm so ready for it, bam, you get results. People have to be convinced. Not going to happen. Yeah,
because again, it's working even on a vibration level or an energy level. Some people like are just not a match. Yeah. And I think that's why it's so important with things like therapy and practitioners and I always say to people, like, come for a consultation if you're interested. And then if it doesn't feel right to you, like, absolutely, there's no pressure to take it forwards, or you just, I think a lot of people end up at my doorstep anyway, because they just get an intuitive feel. They're like, I just know I want to do this and I feel ready, and you've been referred to me and it just feels right. And at that point, I know that that person is like, okay, you know, they're ready. But like you say, if they need lots of convincing or whatever, then nah.
Yeah, go away, come back later. Not ready for you now. It sounds so magical though. I could talk to you about this forever. Do you do all this with your celeb clients? I know you never used to tell me who you were seeing, but I definitely knew that you were teaching very exciting people to meditate. Just the things that you would say, and you would go out to Antigua and you'd be sitting in all this luxurious settings. Are you still high flying? That question's thrown you, hasn't it?
Yeah,
it's not in line.
No, like I don't know. I have such a huge amount of respect for my clients, and they are constant teachers to me. And I think that's also something that is really important to me, to also realize that, you know, everybody that I see in my practice teaches me something.
Oh, you're too modest. I just want to know the gossip. What celebs have you been teaching? No, it's all right. I won't push it.
No, and do you know what? I don't actually, to be honest, it was always a lot more in the business world. So I think because of my background in business, I think it seemed to attract business leaders or people that were CEOs of companies and very successful in their own right, but at the same time struggling a lot personally. And I think because I make this information in the spiritual world, but also learning about ourselves, as I said, like I'm a grounded person. You know, I bring it into reality. It's about being more human. It's not about being airy fairy, right? And so I think that that allowed me a bridge to teaching, you know, leaders and CEOs and people like that, because they were like, oh my gosh, she's relatable. I can understand what she's talking about. I can apply this to my really busy life. And I really enjoy that aspect. And I think that's also why, you know, I continue to do work in businesses, because it's about bringing this knowledge and understanding and making it relevant to people and their lives. And I think, yeah, there was a time that I was traveling a lot and teaching in glamorous places, and I love to travel. You know, that is a part of who I am, and that did afford me some amazing opportunities. But I think in the last few years, it was about me really being grounded in London. You know, it'd be very easy for me to go and live off in, you know, Bali or Antigua or somewhere really glamorous like that. But the London.
Yeah, why are you here?
Because the city of London, there's a lot of people in a lot of suffering.
That's just you're just too nice.
But it's about balance, right? So I do love my holidays and I do love a beach. So, you know, as soon as COVID time is up, I will be transporting myself to a palm tree and a beach. And
I will save the world and all the suffering people in London until COVID is done, and then I'm going to go traveling.
And then I'm going to leave. Yeah, no. So I don't know. I just really felt called to come back to the city and to open a practice, you know, physical bricks and mortar place where people could come and see me, and as well as do my work internationally as well. And I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed being grounded, living in Hampstead Heath, which is just lovely and nature filled, and being able to see people in person.
Yeah.
But I also cannot deny that at some point I will go to a beach.
Totally. And if you need a personal nutritionist to come with you, you just let me know.
I will. Definitely.
I don't want to let you go though before I ask you the question that has just been on my mind so much, because I have to admit, since having a baby, the 20 minutes in the morning and the 20 minutes in the evening meditation, and I remember you saying it sort of before you eat so you don't have a full stomach, and like I've just not been able to get back into the amazing headspace that I was in before I had him.
Yeah.
Can you access this deep healing meditative state without having to do it as intensely as 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening? And can you because some meditation teachers say you just need to do it for 5 minutes. I think, really? I mean, that doesn't really feel like you'd be able to go deep at that point. There's lots of questions in there.
No, really good question. Really good question. Because again, it's about the relevancy of your everyday life. It's like, how practical is it to do these things, right? When you've got little ones and demands and jobs and everything, you know? And I think this is where we have to be realistic and do what we can when it feels right. So obviously it's great if you can fit in 20 minutes, but at the same time, if doing 10 minutes, lying down in bed, scanning your body before you go to sleep is the only opportunity then you're going to get in a day, then do it.
You know what? I've needed you to say these words for so long. I have meditation guilt and often think of you every single day of my life.
No. So meditation, or whether it's meditation or maybe it's yoga or maybe it's breath work, I always just say that these tools are things to bring connection back to yourself. So it doesn't even have to look like a 20-minute meditation practice. For me, you know, it's just as important to go for a walk in nature. And maybe you can take your little one with you, you know, taking a nice stroll, looking at the trees, taking in your environment, really connecting to the space around you. Yes, it's slightly different, but that's still teaching mindfulness. It's still bringing you back to the present moment. So I think even things like, you know, getting out into nature is a really powerful way of getting a time in your day for connection to yourself and your surroundings. I think being able to even just take a moment to place a hand on your belly and a hand on your heart and just take a deep breath in and out for 5 minutes is beneficial. And I think it's not having these lofty expectations or, you know, of, okay, I need to do 40 minutes of meditation a day, otherwise I'm rubbish. It's like, we don't need another thing to feel bad about. Do you know what I mean? It's like, we want to just do these things that make us feel good, that build this sense, this muscle, like we were saying, that connection muscle to ourselves. And that can be done in a variety of different ways.
Oh, I wish I'd spoken to you years ago.
Does that help?
That really helps. Thank you. Although there was also part of me that just was thinking you'd say, no, come on, Jodie, carve out that time.
Well,
I have this feeling of missing out. I feel like I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I feel like if I it's all or nothing with me. I've either got to be meditating and really meditating or not.
Yeah, and I completely get that. And some people then respond really well to, you know, setting timers or having like a thing on their fridge of like, oh, I've done a whole week and I've starred every day that I've done a meditation. Some people really respond to that. So I think, like you say, it's about really understanding how you work and your lifestyle. And then it's being able to say, well, if I can't do 20 minutes every day, could I do 10? And just set myself that goal and say, I'm going to do it for a week. And I'm literally going to commit everything to doing it. And then see how you feel after that week. And then it's like, oh, okay, I've done a week. Oh, I'm just going to try and do another week, 10 minutes. And just keep it at that. And then start just like showing up for yourself every day. Because yes, it is a balance between it being enjoyable and something realistic, but also not giving yourself an easy route out and to say, oh, I'm just not going to do it today. Because the ego is going to have a fit whenever you try and start a new habit. It's just going to go, oh no, I need to do that. I need to do that. No, the ego doesn't like change, especially change that is really helpful to yourself. So it's going to pick
bastard ego.
All the stories to be like, no, don't do it today. So yeah, it's a balance between being kind to yourself, but also not giving yourself the easy route out.
Oh, why is the ego just so irritating? I mean, that's a whole other podcast.
I was going to say whole other podcast, because I think the ego gets a really bad rap, and especially in the spiritual communities. And actually the ego is our friend, and we don't want to eradicate the ego. The ego has a very important role to play. So we can be also kind to the ego, but it can also play lots of tricks on us too.
Oh, what a cliffhanger you're going to leave me on. What a cliffhanger. Thanks. I'm not going to sleep at night thinking, what's the ego doing?
I mean, that was like a whole other hour talking about the ego. But yeah.
Well, you'll have to come back.
I'd love to.
I'm going to throw one big curveball at you. Well, ish, it's not that much of a curveball. If you had to pick one thing that we could all do for our health, you know, the emotional, spiritual, one thing to lift us up and connect,
yeah,
or just to have a better life,
yeah,
what would it be?
nature. Yeah, even when
Amazing.
you were saying it, that was just coming through. Like, and I think this is the thing. I can teach all these various different things, which I do and facilitate, but you know what? We are so disconnected to our natural world, and nature is the biggest healer. It really is. And it doesn't cost us anything. You can go for a walk for 5-10 minutes and notice and be in your environment, and it does you absolute wonders. And I will always be a passionate advocate for nature and the healing abilities of nature. So yeah, that's and it's such a potent connector to ourselves, each other, and our environment. And actually the beautiful thing is, as I said, it's on our doorstep. It's just, can you see it? Are you willing to go to the nearest park, you know, or, you know, go to the countryside, or to just go and like notice the flowers that are starting to bloom? And, you know, again, maybe it's a completely different podcast, but especially as women, you know, like we're rhythmic, cyclical beings. Nature is the reflection of that. And it's like the more that we tune into our outer nature, the more we tune into our inner nature, and vice versa. You know, it's such a potent connector. So yeah, but also for men too. It's not just women, like, you know, and I think that's also why, you know, being where I am in Hampstead Heath, it's amazing for people to come from the inner city, then just out to the Heath. And I take clients onto the Heath and they're like, oh my gosh, I never knew this here, like this amazing ancient oak tree, you know, and they immediately feel less anxious and less stressed. And it was like, that just took like a 4-stop tube journey out of, and now you're in a completely different mental, physical, emotional state. So yeah, nature.
Love it. I almost feel like COVID has helped with that so much, because there's nothing else to do other than get out for a walk. I've discovered the most beautiful forest. I live near Epping Forest, and
Amazing.
there are places we wouldn't have discovered otherwise, and people are growing their own food. And I just feel like we've got to take some silver lining from this whole process, and maybe that's it. It's that reconnection with nature again.
Yeah, you're so right. And I'm so glad you said that, because it's something I've really noticed too. You know, somebody that's always walked the Heath, and the amount of people now seeing families and kids like really engaging with the environment. And like you say, just taking that walk, taking that extra time. And it's just like, you can also just see, you know, nature reciprocates, it's responding. There's the different seasons that you go through, and you can just see like, yeah, there's that reconnection. There seems to be a relationship that is being built that maybe we've forgotten, you know. And we're, like you say, and so beautifully said, you know, the silver lining possibly in some of all of this is that we reconnect back to nature and our natural selves.
Oh, Naomi, honestly, every time I talk to you, you just waken a part of me up that is just something that I've been wanting to go into for so long. And it's so lovely speaking to you. I could talk to you for days and days. I think we've got two other podcast episodes that we could possibly go into.
Yeah.
It's been amazing. And sorry, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say it was really amazing to chat with you too. And like you say, it's just, we all know this stuff. It's just remembering it.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And if people are listening to this and need to soak even more of you up, where can they find you? Are you findable?
I am findable. So people can go to my website, naomijwright.com. They can read got blogs and things on there, and a meditation that you can download, and you can read more about my work there. And also I am on Instagram, and even though previously I have not been active on Instagram, I think I've posted like 10 posts in maybe like 2 years or something, but that is going to be changing. So I am going to be more active on Instagram going forward. So do come and say hello, because I love to write, and I write poetry and things like this. So I'm going to be a lot more active there. So come and say hi.
Oh, that's so exciting. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure to chat with you, and also to connect with your community as well.
Totally. I think you're going to be flooded with everyone wanting their soul bodies checked and emotions back on track. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Jodie, and hopefully see you again soon.
See you soon.
Bye.